So you got your hands on some wood pallets and you're thinking that would make some great wood for some upcoming projects, but now you've got the challenge of getting them apart. I've got some great tips as well as some tools that are going to make things a lot easier for you up next. Hey everyone, my name is Jeff, and very close to us there is a furniture store that's been throwing away wood pallets. And I've been accumulating them and breaking them apart over time, and I've gotten quite good at it, and I figured I'd share some of this information with you as well as some of the tools that I've acquired over time to make disassembling pallets way quicker and way easier. Everything I'm talking about in this video, all the tools I'm going to be using, are all going to be linked down in the video description so you can find out more information about them. First, in my opinion, there are multiple ways to do the same thing. There's multiple ways to break apart pallets. I'm just going to show you in this video what has worked best for me, and if you do this correctly, you can get a lot of great quality wood out of it. So there's two main parts to breaking apart pallets. First, you have to separate the wood, and then you need to remove any of the staples or nails that are left over. Now this can get exhausting quickly, so I would usually work on breaking apart pallets for like a half hour to an hour, and then I would usually take a break. I would recommend this as well. There's a lot of physical labor involved, especially working with your hands, so I typically wear a good pair of gloves, and I use several different tools to break apart the pallets. Wondering if it's worth your time and labor to break apart the pallets? Stick around till the end of this video as I do a quick cost analysis of what each one of these pallets breaks down to in cost savings and about how much time it took me per pallet. So the first thing I typically do is separate the boards with a sledgehammer. So the first tool I use is a good sledgehammer or mallet with a long handle. And I usually use the sledgehammer to break apart the wood by tapping on either side of the support boards to separate them slightly from the other pieces of wood. You'll notice that I kind of knock the boards back and forth to help get them separated. There's different styles of pallets, so you'll need to adjust your tapping depending on how the boards are laid out, but I found that it's not about how hard you are pounding on the pallets, but more so the system that I use or that you're going to use to hit the pallet to essentially loosen up the boards. With hitting the boards, I usually don't use a lot of force. I've found that especially with some of the thinner boards, usually the boards that are on the top of the pallets, if you hit those too hard, those tend to break easier. Lighter pressure and more taps actually works better from my experience. Now, even taking my time and trying not to break any of the boards, I still managed to break a few boards per pallet. You got to keep in mind that these are pallets, and depending on the age and maybe the build, materials that they used for them, it's not always going to be the greatest quality of wood, so you're just going to have boards that break. If there's roughly 10 boards to a pallet, usually I get 8 or 9 usable ones, and I usually break 1 or 2 boards. To remove boards that are stapled or nailed to the top of the pallet, usually those top boards, I will flip the pallet over completely upside down and then rest it on a couple of boards just so that they're raised off the ground enough so there's a few inches between the pallet boards and the ground. And then I'll start taking the sledgehammer and tapping the pallet boards each one at a time by the corners where the nails or staples are, where they're fastened, so that it starts loosening up those staples or nails. And depending on how the pallet was put together, sometimes those boards would completely come apart. Other times, though, they usually would just separate enough for me to get access to the nails or staples. And if this video is helping you out, if you're learning something, take a second and smash that like button. It helps out this video, this channel, and I greatly appreciate it. So once I have enough spacing between the boards, then I would use a Sawzall and cut any nails or staples apart. Now this is going to leave some nails sticking out of the wood, but we'll take care of that next. I use a Milwaukee tool Sawzall with a 9-inch blade. Now you may not have a Sawzall, so you could use a hacksaw as well, but man, having a Sawzall makes things so much easier and quicker. You'll be able to blow through taking apart the pallets much faster. See if you got a friend or family member that has one that you can borrow, or consider making the investment in a good quality saw. And a big shout out to It's Axel, one of the recent viewers on this channel, to find Tinker in one of my recent videos. You too can find Tinker. He's hidden in all the videos on this channel, and he's going to be popping up at some point during this video. So keep your eyes open for that little hidden robot. And if you are the first person to correctly let me know the amount of time into the video, that's the timestamp of when he pops up, be the first person down in the comments, and I will put your name on our Tinker Forward Hall of Fame page, as well as give you a shout out in a future video. So you can get some great wood from all these separated pieces, but the problem now is that typically we're going to have staples and nails still sticking out of them. You can use a hammer to pound in any real short nails or staples if you want. I like to try and pry as many of the nails and staples out as possible just to get a much cleaner look. To work with removing these nails and staples, I do this sitting down just to kind of save my legs. So I usually set up some sort of a folding table. Workbench works great, and then I sit on some sort of a chair. This saves me from having to be standing. And then I use the following tools, kind of a combination of all of them, to help remove all the different staples and nails. So I would recommend a pair of fence tool pliers. You can also use any type of staple remover, and then some sort of a multi-tool pry bar that has claws on each end of it. The flatter of a pry bar you have, the better, just because it makes it easier to get underneath any of those staples. I like using the fence tool pliers to remove the nails and staples because you can leverage the pliers on the wood, allowing you to bend up the nails and staples with very little force. The remover tool has an indented edge on it that can leave marks on your wood. So to minimize the marking, I just use a rag or a cloth that I put between the tool and the piece of wood to kind of soften some of that indentation. It's not so much about using large amounts of force, but just carefully removing each one of the staples and nails with those pliers. It can be a little tedious, but honestly, it works great. With each pallet being put together differently, sometimes you'll have boards that you can't just separate with a sledgehammer. Sometimes I use a combination of a little bit of mallet hitting to get a little separation, and then I also go back and use the crowbar to finish separating. And of course, once I have enough space, then I get them apart using that Sawzall. After removing the nails and staples, I like to use some sort of an electric sander to sand down all of the boards, just to reduce the chances of getting any splinters. Between breaking apart everything with the mallets and different tools I use, sometimes it's going to leave small dents in different areas of the boards, and by sanding those down, that seems to make those dents minimize, if not disappear. And then if you're going to paint any of the wood that you're using for whatever project, painting it also helps mask any of those imperfections. Let's do a quick cost and somewhat price comparison analysis. So to look at the cost of what this wood would be if I was going to buy it at like Home Depot, this first pallet has 2x4s and 1x4s. Total cost is going to be roughly about $45. It took me about 20 minutes to break apart a pallet like this, and then about another 10 minutes of sitting down pulling out those nails, for a total time of about 30 minutes. So 30 minutes to do about $45 in wood is not bad. For another pallet that has like a piece of plywood on the top of it, again, it uses 2x4s, and there's even some 1x4s. Something like this is going to cost around $30 for the wood. And then total time, again, it's pretty close. There's a few more boards that I got to mess with on this, a little bit longer to get in between that plywood and those 2x4s. So I'm estimating here this one took me about 40 minutes between breaking it apart and pulling out those nails. The more pallets that I break apart, the faster I was able to get, and the process became easier. You should check out the laundry basket cabinet that I made from pallets, just so you can kind of see a finished product and the whole process it took me to do that particular cabinet. That'll be linked at the end of this video. And if you have some experience breaking down pallets and you want to give some others some tips, or I always like learning from you guys, leave me a comment down below on what you think is the best way you have found to break apart pallets. My name is Jeff, and as always, I appreciate you watching. Be sure to make every day awesome, and I will see you in the next video.